Hello, welcome, Cabbage here. So, the second season of the Nier Automata anime wrapped up. I'll give my thoughts on that here, and some of them will be pretty similar to my first season thoughts. I'll link to that video below if you want to watch that first. And just like that first video, I'll give a few of my likes, a few of my dislikes, and then rather than give my hopes for the second season like I did in the first video, I'll talk about my biggest takeaways from the series overall. I'll also talk a little bit about the concert series of concerts that has been going on around the world for Nier music. It seems to extend at least one timeline of the Nier Automata story. My first like about the anime was the same as the first season, and that was showing the first landing of the first Yorha unit. And their meeting with the Resistance, and then how it all fell apart, kind of like A2's origin story. The whole story was pretty much covered in its entirety in Season 1, but they added a couple nuggets here in Season 2. And by showing that, they filled out A2's history, which is my other like of the second season. Not that I needed more reasons for me to like A2, but yes, it did reinforce it. I also liked kind of the red eye makeup. It makes her look wild, but also kind of sorrowful, like she's cried too much. I also appreciated the peek at 9S's history of being killed over and over at the hands of 2B. But that too, I feel like it didn't add anything new to the character. It just kind of made more visual, more easy to understand what was just an idea that was talked about or hinted at before. And of course, it didn't change my opinion of 9S as a character. Now for my dislikes, same as the first season, I didn't like the attempt at humanization of the machine lifeforms. And I didn't like the focus on the romance between 2B and 9S. I also didn't like Lily and Pascal's endings, and to a lesser scale, I didn't like A2 being the butt of jokes. But one thing that I felt that the second season improved on over the first season was that kind of the jokey, silly atmosphere of the first season was put away for the most part in the second. But let's focus on the last 2 points that I made, Lily and Pascal's ending, and then A2 being the butt of jokes, over the first two, because I covered those in the previous video. As for Lily, I was legitimately interested in her character in Season 1, and she was my biggest hopes for Season 2 to get more info on her. I felt like they built her up in mystery pretty well, hinting that she was important. But in Season 2, it turned out that she was just there for cheap emotional jabs, kind of a very stereotypical sort of character arc, She's shy, she doesn't have the confidence to be a leader, and then she finds the confidence to become a leader, that kind of thing. She was really just there to service A2's story. Granted, A2's story is important enough that it deserves subplots and secondary characters to reinforce it, but having the main anime original character ultimately not matter very much kind of casts a shadow over the anime as a whole. It makes me ask, why does this exist? I understand why it exists, of course. It's to broaden the appeal to folks that did not play the games. But Lily, in retrospect, now looks kind of shoehorned in, and it's a shame. Next is Pascal, and this is more upsetting to me personally because she was one of my favorites in the game. A pretty complex character with an interesting past, the true philosopher's spirit, and also one of the hardest choices in the game. That choice is presented when Pascal is so traumatized by the loss of their kin that we have to choose to destroy Pascal, or wipe their memory, or just leave them to deal with their trauma alone. I think it's one of the most profound moments of the game. I chose memory wipe for my first playthrough, and seeing her watch the rocket blast off into space in ending E of the game gave me a little hope that she would start anew and rebuild, found a new village, teach a new generation. Not in the anime, however. Pascal discovers the children killed each other because of the virus, and he/she just instantly gives up, no choice considered at all, and allows herself to be killed as well. One thing I did appreciate in the anime was the, again, the visualization of Pascal's past as a battle robot, but this new ending was like an all-new, all-bad ending for Pascal that was not nearly as profound as what we were faced with in the game. So that was disappointing. However, it does signal at a different timeline, which is going to continue beyond the anime series here. My other quibble with the anime is minor, and that is making A2 the butt of jokes. I call this the Vegeta syndrome, where A tough badass character is put into silly situations to get laughs from the juxtaposition. I forgive it here because it's only done for an episode or two, and then A2 is resistant the entire time. That's important. And then we get right back to A2 being the badass main character. But the danger of going too far with the jokes is you might destroy the previous perception of the character, especially if that character joins in on the silliness, like they start acting cute or wearing stupid costumes or doing stupid dances. And that's why I said it's important that A2 resisted. It kind of protected her original character, that authenticity. Alright, and then that takes me to my big takeaways from the anime overall. The ending of the anime is not perfectly any of the game endings, C, D, or E, and I want to think about what that means. There are references to each, and one thing I found interesting is that in the anime, 9S's ending felt much more like a dream or hallucination than in the video game. Playing the game, I really felt that Adam had somehow survived and was really taking the database to the stars, but the scene in the anime just looked and felt so fantastical that I couldn't believe it. Does this change my interpretation of the game ending? No, I still want to think that Adam, one of my favorite characters, for being one of the most philosophical in the game, somehow survived that series of events fighting 2B, and turned over a new leaf, and took the true philosopher's path of searching for answers. And then there's A2's ending, where she hacks into 9S, and then destroys the tower. That's pretty similar as to the game. As for ending E, in the game we see 9S and 2B lying next to each other, and the pods hint that they will live again. And I always interpreted that to mean that more people are going to pick up the game, and kind of play through the story again within Automata, rather than a continuation of this story playing out in the future. In the game, we had just finished up the credits shooting section of the ending, where the message was as players, we're all in this together, we're experiencing the same thing and we can help each other out, that kind of thing. And so that's why I interpreted the ending of 9S and 2B lying next to each other in that way. Their story would continue, but in a meta way rather than a literal way. However, the anime ending seems to continue things in a literal sense, where they are lying next to each other and then they wake up and their journey continues. It is left up to the viewers' imagination and interpretation what that journey is going to look like beyond the anime. And that kind of leads me back to my previous video I made, where I kind of guess at what the next Nier game could look like. I'll link to that below as well. I floated the strong possibility that 2B and 9S would return. A lot of people push back on that idea, which I understand and respect. They argue that every Nier game has an all-new cast of characters. But for many fans, 9S and 2B are the face of the franchise. They're also the best-selling by far, more than A2, more than the Replicate cast, more than the Dragon Guard casts. The end of this anime could have been hinting that they will be in the next console game, although we will see to what degree, if they will be main playable characters or non-playable NPCs or something. But I think the answer lies in the concert tour of the Nier music. One of the first biggest hints that we got was about the poster for the concert tour. I talked about this in a previous video as well. It shows 9S and 2B in an even more apocalyptic looking future, with maybe snow and seemingly no one else around. Is this the end of the line? Are the pair destined to wander this dead landscape forever? Or does this kind of hint at a beginning of the next chapter of their story? And it was really interesting. I looked at reports of the concert, and although they are playing, a retrospective of music from all of the previous games, they're kind of showing lines of the screen from 9S and 2B's point of view, and it's actually kind of extending the story beyond ending E of Nier Automata. I won't go into detail here. There are videos out there talking about the content of the concerts, but ultimately it does seem like that poster that we see is the end of 9S and 2B. And so with that new knowledge, I'm now more on the side that 9S and 2B will not be in the next Nier console game. Which again, I'm personally very fine with that. I've said many times I never really connected to those characters. But notably absent in the concert stories is A2, and I think that leaves the door open for more of her in the future, which I'm much more excited about. I think she's one of the deepest, most interesting characters in Automata. Another big takeaway that I had from the anime was pretty much no reference to reincarnation, outside of oblique ones to like the Moon database. That's disappointing, but really in the big picture, the individual stories of the reincarnation characters are not important. What matters are Mama, the cage, the administrators, the Moon database, stuff like that. And that was more referenced. And the last big takeaway was an appearance by Accord at the end. I know a lot of people place a lot of importance on Accord, but I still don't personally see what the big deal is. I saw, mentions of her in each part of the trilogy. Replicant version 1.22, Reincarnation, Automata the game, and now Automata the anime, and even Sino Alice. But so far it's amounted to a big so what for me. It hasn't led to anything, and so I'm kind of done expecting anything from her until we get something more concrete. But I think her appearance in the anime maybe points to the 9S and 2B story continuing beyond the video game, advancing into that post-apocalyptic world depicted in the concert poster, is maybe a signal of Accord seeing this timeline, seeing it's not working, seeing it's not leading anywhere, and closing it down or shutting it off. Not pursuing it in any sense, because it's not a better ending for the human race, which I'm assuming she is aiming for. And then I said something semi-controversial about Accord, which I will say again. But I want to point back to a developer livestream where it said that Mama/Pod006 has close ties to Accord, perhaps even that Pod006 created Accord. And so for that reason, Mama may actually be the most important character in all of Nier. Okay, so those are my thoughts on the Automata anime and a little bit about the concert series. If you know more about the concert series, or if you attended yourself, I'd be interested to hear how you interpreted especially the lines that appeared on screen, and then also the poster, and then maybe how all of that ties to the end of the Automata anime. Alright, maybe a couple weeks until the Reincarnation art book comes out. Hopefully I can get out another Nier video between now and then. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again. Take care.